I know it's spring break for some schools, and then for others, maybe have some Easter festivities coming up before Good Friday, depending on if you have that day off. So thank you for joining us. All right, so I'll briefly introduce myself. I'm Camille. I'm the community manager here at Nido Marketing and Montessori Thrive. And every week we host these free Montessori leadership town halls to talk about all things school leadership. So sometimes we talk about administration, sometimes we talk about how to communicate with families, and a lot of what we talk about has to do with Montessori marketing. That's our bread and butter here at Nido Marketing. We are a Montessori marketing agency. And I wanted to have a presentation to kind of go over how your school website and paid ads work together to drive enrollment. Because what I've noticed on a lot of my school growth calls where I speak to people one-on-one about running ads or giving them advice on their website is that they don't understand that there is a huge link between how your website performs and how your Google Ads performs. So just a brief overview of what we're going to talk about. We'll talk briefly about what are Google search ads. So we'll really break it down. We'll talk about targeting prospective parents, taking a look at your Montessori website and why your website determines your ad performance. And I'll give some tips on how you can optimize your website so that you are actually getting a good return on your investment when you're running Google Ads or any type of paid advertising. When will you see results? So how long does it actually take to see those tangible results on Google Ads? What determines that? How much is the cost of running paid digital advertising? I think a lot of schools always have that question. So we'll go over how to come up with a budget for Google Ads. Also understanding the language. What does the terminology mean in Google Ads? And then how to maintain your ads so that you can get the max results. And we'll have time for Q&A at the end, but these town halls are always very collaborative. So you can always unmute yourself and ask a question, or you can drop a question in the chat and I'll keep an eye on that as well. I'd love for everyone to introduce themselves, so please feel free to comment what school you're joining us from and why you joined this. Are you just curious about learning about Google Ads? Do you want to have a better understanding of how they work together with your website? Just happy to see where everyone is joining us from. I see familiar names, I see new ones, so it's always good to briefly introduce each other. So just feel free to drop that in the chat. Hi, Jill from Montessori Academy in West Adams, California. Great, thank you for joining us. Maya from Bozeman Montessori, just hoping to get some ideas on how to better use the website on marketing side of things. Okay, great. Marianne from International School of Bellevue in Washington. Great. So we have a couple West Coast schools. Wonderful. Okay, I'll keep an eye on that. So first, what are Google search ads? Just to put it simply, a Google search ad is an online advertisement displayed on Google's search engine results page. Currently, Google is probably the most popular tool that people are using to look for schools and just research what is available in their area. So running ads on Google can increase your school's visibility by placing your school at the top of these search results, and it will drive that targeted traffic to your website. So when you run ads on Google Ads, you're only paying when somebody clicks on your ads. That's just another important thing to note. So this is pretty much what it would look like. Montessori schools near me might be something that a parent would search. And then when you see the top results usually say sponsored. That means somebody is paying to run an advertisement in order to have a higher ranking. So that would be an example of what it would look like. Usually this is the first results. So it's important to be shown quite early on Google because parents rarely will look past the second page. So you want to be sure to be ranking pretty highly. So targeting prospective parents. A couple ways you can do this is by using a target keyword. You can also use key phrases. that parents are likely to use in order to search for Montessori schools near them. Some examples of these might be Montessori schools in your location, daycare near me, Montessori elementary schools. So Google Ads will also allow your ads to appear for searches that are similar in meaning or intent or relevance. Essentially, Google is trying to show its users, here's something that we think would be helpful, and you are bidding on those keywords as well. So that's kind of how Google Ads work. It is kind of an auction. So a lot of Google Ads will depend on how competitive your area is, how many other people are running ads. Um, and it's good to have a list of keywords at your disposal. I believe Google Ads has a free keyword finder. So if you decide to run your own Google Ads, I recommend using something like that so that you can come up with a couple of key phrases to add to your campaigns. But just think about what parents might be entering into that search bar when you want to come up as a result for them. That's a good way to find those search terms. You can also target by location. This is especially relevant to Montessori schools because we are, of course, trying to target parents within a certain geographic radius. So this allows us to specify where your ads are going to be shown. You don't need to pay to have your ads shown in New York if your school is on the West Coast because it's just not relevant to that parent necessarily. Um, so this means advertisers can choose to display their ads only in specific countries, regions, cities, or even within a particular radius of your location. Something I always recommend schools to do is think about commute paths that parents might take, what neighborhoods are nearby, and you can always draw a radius and determine where you really want to focus on running your advertisements. Uh, formally, formally, we would guarantee 6 miles or so, but now there are so many other ways that are no longer relevant. So I don't know, it really comes up to the school. Sometimes a lot of parents might commute into the inner city and you have an inner city school. So you might actually be targeting parents that live in the suburbs, but because they have an office job in the city, they're willing to drop their kids off a little bit further away from where they live. So it's always important to have those things in consideration. And then also remarketing, something that Google Ads can do. So this allows us to reconnect with users who have previously interacted with our website. So this is when somebody visits our website once, and then they're going on the internet to view something else, and they're seeing an ad to revisit our website. This is effective because sometimes it's important to be seen several times over and over again, and parents might then have their interest piqued again and revisit your website. So your Montessori website is essential and crucial when running Google Ads. Um, it's more important than you think. So when you're running paid ads, and I've just gone over the different ways, the different forms that you can run those ads. Every time someone clicks on that sponsored post or maybe a remarketing ad, they are being taken to your website and you are being charged for that parent to click on that. So if you're leading parents to a bad website where they can't make conversions or things are not clear, then Google Ads will likely not give you the performance that you are looking for. So your website is really essential. And I always recommend if people want to run Google Ads, great. But first, just make sure things on your website are really clear and clean because that will significantly impact the performance of your Google Ads. So what happens if your website is not optimized, but you're running Google Ads? So these are some things that might happen. A visitor might click on your sponsored campaign. They might not be impressed with the website and they'll leave, but you've already clicked, you've paid for that click. So you're not getting that return on your investment. So what makes a website unimpressive? Maybe some blurry images, images that don't really relate or correlate to Montessori, an outdated website. Sometimes parents will look at an outdated website and say, this doesn't seem professional, especially millennial and Gen Z parents. They are digital natives. They're very used to the internet nowadays. So they really want to be able to navigate a good website. A parent might want to schedule a tour, but there isn't a way to do this on your website. Maybe the only way to schedule a tour is to request a tour and write an email to you or to call the school. Guess what? Parents are so busy and a lot of people just want to be able to do things automatically. So if there's no way for them to schedule a tour, they might get annoyed and just click on the next Montessori that's near them because it's easier to do that whole process. Or you might get ghost engagement. So people visit your website, but they don't make a conversion. So they click on that sponsored post or that remarketing post, but they're brought to your website and there's really nothing for them to do to take the next step. So they leave and you've paid for that click and you really haven't made any conversions. That parent isn't necessarily taking the next step towards enrollment. So these are things that we want to avoid on our school website. So what can we do to optimize our website so that our Google Ads run better and they're actually giving us a return on our investment? Well, the first and the most important probably is to have a clear call to action. Oftentimes, when schools aren't seeing a good return on their investment on Google Ads, it's because they don't have a clear CTA. So I highly recommend um, deciding on what is the main purpose of your website. Usually in Montessori, that is to get parents to sign up for a tour. The reason why that should be your main CTA is because the tour is what sells parents on Montessori, usually getting them through the door to see the classrooms, to see the environments, to meet yourself or a guide who's giving the tour. That is what will convert them into becoming Montessori parents and hopefully enrolling at your school. So we recommend for your main CTA to be schedule a tour. Your your website should also be modern, clear, and have good imagery. I think this is really important nowadays because if you have a really outdated website, it just gives a bad impression. It doesn't look very professional, and it gives parents that an impression that maybe you don't have the resources, you don't have the time to update your website, and for a parent that might not be a green flag for them. Have lead generators or forms for families to fill out and leave their contact information. And I'll offer a couple of examples on this, but it's always good to have a variety of different forms on your website that can allow you to collect important contact information. So again, you're paying for that click. If you're running Google Ads, you're paying for that sponsored spot, you're paying for the remarketing. So you want something in return, and in return, you should want a contact, whether it's an email or a phone number of an interested parent. You should want a tour scheduled. You want something that is an actual tangible conversion in order to get that return on your investment. So have those forms on your website. Another big one, and this is something that we recommend to our clients that run Google Ads, is to gate your tuition. This is a huge game changer and probably going to be one of your most filled out forms on your school website. And then also just have purposeful content. I think this makes such a difference to have content that uses your keywords, that uses those search terms kind of woven naturally and organically into the content. That is always helpful. All right, so let's take a look at Nido site so we can see kind of some of these examples I'm talking about. So if a parent were to click on my sponsored ad, let's say they click on that top spot that I paid to be at, or the top 3 spot. When they click on my homepage, it becomes very clear that I am a Montessori school that serves this age group. So a parent can automatically tell if I'm relevant to them. And I clearly want them to schedule a tour. This is the main point of the website. So here they see a schedule a tour. They can do so simply on a form in a couple of clicks. And it's also up here in the navigation bar. So that's important. Jill, what do you mean by get your tuition? Yes, great question. So what I mean by get your tuition is don't list your tuition rates on your website. So this is usually the journey that a parent will take on your school website. So they've clicked on that Google ad that you've paid to run. You've taken them to your homepage. Oh, there's a program for my child. I'm going to go see how much it costs. If they click on your tuition and fees and they see a price that they're not exactly aligned with, they might immediately leave and you have gotten nothing from that parent. They didn't schedule a tour yet because they wanted to know the price. And they didn't even take the time to really look more into your content. So what you can do instead is you get your tuition, you put it behind a form. So a parent would have to fill out this form and click this button. As soon as they click that button, they are receiving an automated email with a little introduction to your school and then the tuition rates attached in a PDF. So they're getting that information right away, but now you have something in return because again, if you're running paid advertising, you want to make sure that you're actually getting something. You're getting a contact, you're getting an email. Now that I have this information, that parent might be a little off put by the tuition rates, but I can send them email marketing. Maybe I can ask for their phone number and give them a personal phone call and say, hey, I noticed you asked for our tuition rates. I'm happy to answer any questions. We'd love to invite you for a tour or an open house day so you can see our program. So you can have a little bit more interaction with parents and you can discuss with them a little bit more about what makes Montessori valuable and worthwhile. Another thing we usually like to include on this page, and this is what I meant by purposeful content, is content that highlights why should they pick Montessori. So in our tuition page, we always include something like this where it's a compare and contrast. So here's what you're going to be getting at Montessori, and here's what you're going to be missing out on if you go to a traditional school. So for instance, our guides are Montessori trained professionals. In traditional school programs, that's not always the case. Our classrooms are child-led. Traditional school typically is adult-led. So you can kind of go through um, why Montessori is valuable. And it kind of will help justify the cost a little bit because a lot of people might not understand why Montessori might cost a little bit more than a daycare. So I recommend doing something like this if you're running Google Ads. I mentioned earlier, this is usually the most filled out form on a school website. So if you're running Google Ads currently, but you're not exactly happy with how things are going, I would recommend implementing a tuition request form because you're going to be getting a lot more contact details from people that visit your website. So that's something I also recommend. I also mentioned to include something called a lead generator. This can be many things. Essentially, a lead generator is a form on your website where you are offering something for free in exchange for contact information. So in this example, we're allowing parents to sign up for a 5-day free email course about the benefits of Montessori education. Another example that you could do is you could offer a free ebook. It could be an ebook on anything. It could be an ebook on the planes of development. It can be an ebook on positive discipline. There's a variety of different things that you can utilize. So I would recommend something like this because it's another way, again, you're clicking for people to come on your website. You want to entice them with something valuable. They now have a takeaway. If you have an ebook, I highly recommend branding it, putting your school information on it as well because they might share it with other parents. But you've now gotten that information from them. You have their name, you have their email, so you can reach out to that parent. You can add them to email marketing lists. So this is another great addition to optimize your website. Just other things that always help with just building a stronger website. As you can see, all of the imagery that we're using is Montessori specific. It's in Montessori classrooms. It's children doing Montessori work. We're listing age ranges consistently. I highly recommend doing that. Just because, again, it helps Google capture that information and it also just helps parents understand where their child would fall. Testimonials. So all of this is stuff that I recommend. Also, what's always helpful is publishing regular content like a blog to keep your website fresh. Google will also take this into account when it comes to ranking your performance and showing you on Google searches. So I recommend having a weekly blog or a bi-weekly blog, whatever your school can manage. It is really great. See here, we have another comment here. We probably agree that we have a lot of leads from tuition download. However, we don't see conversions. How can we engage the families that download tuition? Can you recommend a nurturing sequence? I really recommend just adding them to a type of email nurture that is centered around the value of Montessori and that is trying to get them to come in for a tour. I think ultimately there will be some people that just they cannot manage the price. And that's something that there's unfortunately not much we can do. If a family absolutely cannot afford to send their child to our school, that is not something that we can really sell them, unfortunately. But I would really focus in on what is the value of Montessori. So perhaps writing a program offering, writing a series of emails that talks about what your school offers. Why is it different than other schools in the area? What are your success stories? Include a parent or family testimonial video in one of those email nurtures. If you're asking for a phone number, I'm not sure. It really depends on what you ask on that form. If you're just asking for email, then email marketing is pretty much all you can do. But if you ask for a phone number, I always recommend if you're having like an open house, you can always say, hey, just wanted to give you a personal invite. We're having an open house and we noticed that you requested tuition information. We're happy to answer any of your questions about how it works. Um, and there you can usually get a feel for, is that parent actually interested after they requested the tuition or not? Um, that's a tricky one because there comes a point where we can't convince every parent when it's just not in their budget. But I feel that if they really tap into the value, some parents that previously may not have thought it was in their budget, they'll find a way to make it work because they were so blown away by Montessori, or they come into the school and um they see that it's the right place for their child. So I would really lean into what sets you apart, what is your value, and doing a campaign based on that. I would also recommend whenever someone requests tuition or does something like this, I would recommend them to receive one email a week, at least for like 7 weeks. Do a 7 or so email nurture so that they're hearing from you consistently after they've taken action on your website. After that, you can add them to just a general newsletter list where they're not hearing from you as frequently, but I really recommend um, even actually you can do one every 3 days, something like that. Really be consistent with that email marketing, really be like, hey, come back, revisit, consider, because they might be at the process where they're just comparing what is available in their area. They might have looked into other tuitions in the area, they might have looked into other programs. Um, and just really encourage them to come in for that tour. That's the main thing, is you don't really know what we're selling until you come into the school and meet us and we can give you a proper tour.
Like, can I jump in real quick too? Something else you could do, Rupali, is definitely call your leads. Whether it's right like the day after or a week after, whatever that looks like, call the leads. If they haven't unsubscribed, call them. And that's a good way to know, like, why are people not converting? Is it price? Is it they don't know about Montessori? Like, that helps inform you so you know how to like tweak what you're doing too. So that's a huge recommendation I always have, is just call them. And I know that as administrators, we don't always have the time. But if you're struggling with enrollment, that's a really good way to get more information and also get yourself in front of those prospective parents.
Great, thank you. And I always feel a little worried about sending too many emails because I don't want to bombard people with our emails. Uh, so we've been sending maybe one email in 2 to 3 weeks, but I guess that's what we need to change. We do make a phone call as soon as we see a lead. Our administrator goes ahead and calls the lead to see.
And
Yeah.
Rupali, I'd even recommend, I know Camilla said every 3 to 5 days. You could even do, it's an it doesn't seem right as Montessorians because we don't want to sound salesy, we don't want to sound pushy, but even every day, a lot of time when people are requesting tuition, they're in the buying phase. They are ready to make a purchase, they're ready to make a decision. So the longer that you wait to tell them, the more likely that they're going to have gone somewhere else. So
Got it.
I always
Yeah.
recommend doing it a little bit, and always add that unsubscribe button. You can always put like a little PS, like if you don't want to hear from me, click the unsubscribe button. I always make that, always makes me feel a little bit better of like, if I say, if you don't want to stop hearing from me, just hit that button. That way they have the option to if they don't want to.
Got it.
And keep in mind that it's every day or every other day for just a couple of days, for just maybe 5 days. And then after that, you can ease a little bit because it is, and just as Elizabeth said, they are in that buying phase where they're looking around, they're shopping around. You want to stay top of mind in that moment because things move very quickly. Parents make up their mind quicker than we think sometimes in certain things. So, yeah, I would
Do
suggest that.
you do you have a set of sequence nurturing emails that we could use?
Yeah, so we have a couple of different ones on Montessori Thrive. I always recommend kind of editing them and making them your own. The one I always recommend, that I think is probably, in my opinion, oops, I need to go to mine. The best is if you go to and this is free, everyone who's on the call who's not a member, you can join Montessori Thrive for free. It is if you go in here and click email nurture on search, the one that I highly recommend is the marketing formula email nurture template. I believe this is 6 or 7 emails.
Okay.
And this is a good one because it's really just focused on the value. It has a whole email dedicated to testimonials. It has a whole a whole email dedicated to, what sets us apart. So this is a good one. You can download it here, and it has all those emails. And I would definitely encourage, make it your own. You can even plug it into ChatGPT and say, make this personalized to this school, and add a couple of details for your school specifically, or Polly. You can talk about how you have science programs, and you can implement that into your overall email. So I recommend this one, but we do have a couple of other ones. This is my
Sounds good.
favorite.
Thank you.
Um, okay. Yep. I also just want to say that nidosite.com, this is our sample school website. So you can always reference it. You can always take a look at it. It's always live. We've had to say on it now that it's not a real school website because we used to get inquiries on it. But just a couple things to improve your overall website. I also always recommend having a general inquiry form because you want to have a way, again, for people to leave their information if you're paying to run ads. So those are just our suggestions for optimizing your website and making sure that it's actually working with your Google Ads. A lot of times when we run Google Ads for people and they're not exactly seeing the results that they want, we usually give website recommendations, and they're a little bit confused as to why, but the website works really, really in connection with your ads. So when will you see results when it comes to Google Ads? So I get this question a lot because I think a lot of people come with the misconception that it's a quick fix when you're running Google Ads, but usually it takes about 2 months to really start seeing Google Ads, specifically if you've never used Google Search Ads before. In about that 2-month mark, you can expect to see an increase in tours booked and contact form submissions or intuition request forms. So you should be seeing that uptick within, for some schools, it's a month, but we like to say 2 months because that's usually the time that you're really starting to see an increase. When tracking Google ad results, it also is really important to have a CRM, a client relationship manager, or a way to collect this data of who is booking your tours, like how many people are showing up, or that data is important because that allows you to track real results. Because Google Ads might show you, oh, this is how many impressions you've made, or this is how many clicks you got, but that doesn't actually necessarily result in you growing your enrollment. So you want tangible things. This is how many tours I've booked this month, or this is how many forms that have been submitted. And the best way to make that assessment is to have some form of a CRM. Jill's asking, but this does not depend on how much you are investing, right? What is the right number when investing for real results? How much do you need to spend? Yes, and we'll get to Google ad budgets in a little bit because it really varies on a lot of factors. But I have a couple of suggestions in terms of overall budget. This is just time-wise. So typically, this might be an example of a change that you would see. So this would be before ads, and this would be after. So hopefully the main purpose is to make those to increase traffic, to make those conversions. Google Ads take time. They are not a quick fix, and they are only a long-term solution. So a lot of people think, oh, I can just run Google Ads before enrollment season, and then I will increase enrollment, and then I can stop them, and then I can just do that over and over again every year. But what we've noticed, we've been running Google Ads for 8 years now for Montessori schools, and we were founded off of a Google Ads agency. And it is a long-term strategy that takes time. The schools that often have the best results with Google Ads are schools that are consistently running ads. They're the ones that have the best performance. Google is a learning machine, and you need to give it time to learn. So Google is always looking at all types of data and processing it. They're always updating, they're always trying to be better, and they're trying to show their users actual results that they want to see. So when you're running ads consistently, it can intake so much more data, and it will perform better for you and for the people that it's targeting. Another thing to note is that just starting and pausing ads will have that negative impact, and also drastic changes in your Google ad spend or campaign spend can impact your performance. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when it comes to how much it costs. So you might ask yourself, do I have a budget to run Google ads? Well, Google ads really vary depending on your local area and competition, how many other schools in your area are currently running ads. And you can kind of sometimes get an idea of this, but really you'll know by how much each click will cost. And also the urgency of enrollment needs. If you really, really, really need enrollments, then you might want to be thinking about a larger budget. So typically, if a school is advertising for the first time, they've never run Google Ads before, we usually recommend starting with a monthly ad budget of around $500 to $700 a month. You may not be able to target all of your keywords or relevant programs with that budget, but this should be enough to cover searches around one or two general programs that you're wanting to focus on, along with just general searches about Montessori schools near me. So that's usually the budget that we would recommend. After around the 2 to 3 month mark, it could be a good idea to scale up on the budget in order to even capture more of those searches. Because again, after that 2 to 3 month mark, Google has started delivering on those clicks. You started getting an increase in inquiries, and now you might want to invest a little bit more to even push your ad to more people and drive traffic up. So that's a general budget. If you have a bigger school, so if you have more programs, if you're just a larger school and you need more enrollment, you might want to consider maybe a slightly larger budget, somewhere between the range of $1,400 to $2,000 per month. A lot of schools think this might be a big number, but if you really think about it, if you're running this consistently throughout the year, even if you get one student, one conversion, that might pay for your entire year of Google Ads. And likely, if you're running Google Ads, you are getting more than one conversion, your one enrollment. So that would be the goal. So it should be a good return on your investment. It is an investment, but it can be a worthwhile one. Any questions so far on timing, on budget? Any of that? Something else I didn't mention before that I recommend when it comes to like taking time, and what a lot of people might do when they start running Google Ads is they'll start Googling themselves a lot to see, oh, is it actually performing? Especially schools that run their own Google Ads. It's something that I've talked about at some of my consultation calls where, um, I'm towards the bottom of the page. Why is that? Well, oftentimes when you search yourself over and over and over again and you click on yourself and you don't make a conversion, Google thinks you're not interested anymore. So it won't show your ad because it thinks, oh, this person has searched this a million times and hasn't made a conversion. I'm not going to show them the ad. So don't fear if you are starting to run Google Ads and you're Googling your school and you're Googling yourself from the same IP addresses. If you're not at the top, that's not how you're presenting to other people. That's just an important note. Because I've seen that a lot with Montessori schools that are like, oh, but when I Google myself, I'm number 7. And I'm like, yeah, but that's just because you've searched yourself probably several times and you haven't made a conversion. You haven't booked a tour because you work at the school. So just keep that in mind. That's something that I also see a lot. All right. Any other questions before we move on to kind of more the vocabulary, the terminology behind Google Ads? Okay. I'll keep an eye on the chat just in case anything comes through. So I talked about conversions. What does a conversion mean? This is usually what we're trying to get with Google Ads. So again, you need to have an optimized website to get conversions. So ways that you could get a conversion is if somebody fills out a tuition request form, if somebody fills out a contact form, if somebody booked a tour, if somebody requested a lead magnet, if somebody makes a phone call from one of your Google Ads. Those are all conversions. This is what we want parents to do when we run Google Ads, and the aim of Google Ads is to make those conversions. An impression is something that's important, but it's not quite a conversion. So it's how many times somebody has seen your ad or has been shown your ads. With Google Ads, you are charged on a pay per click basis. So ultimately, you do want a result showing to a lot more people because that's important. It's important to be in the top, couple of search results because you're being seen more and the likelihood of you being clicked on is a lot higher. But if someone just sees your website, they haven't necessarily made a conversion. That's not necessarily something that is giving you a return on your investment. Cost per click, as I mentioned, Google Ad charges advertisers only when a person actually clicks on the ad, and the average CPC shows how much you pay per click. Again, this really depends on your area. If you live in a more rural area, there's less competition, it will be a lower cost. But usually in the Montessori space, it could be anywhere from around $3 to maybe $4.50. And this might change depending on, again, how competitive your area is, how many people are running ads, especially if you're bidding on keywords that are highly competitive. So that's just something to consider that it might be different. Your keywords, again, this is the words that we as advertisers are targeting. Usually for us, it's Montessori school, maybe it's primary programs in my area. They're keywords and key phrases. So they're not always just one word. And again, I highly recommend if you want to get an idea of a couple of keywords that you might want to be bidding on, you can always use Google Keyword Finder, which is free. And I believe you can also use AI out there. There's lots of free AI that could probably help you determine a couple of good keywords and key phrases to help you run better campaigns. The search term is what parents are searching into the actual Google search. So think about what parents might be Googling. This is a good strategy to kind of help you determine how can we target those families. Usually people will enter Montessori near me as a keyword, but our ads will also show them to people who search for best Montessori in my area or your name Montessori near me. These are an idea of what a search term is. And then there are different campaigns that you can run on Google Ads. So you can kind of decide from a school, what is our goal with Google Ads? Do we need to fill up a specific program? I spoke with a school another day that said, hey, we have plenty of toddler and CASA enrollments, but we're struggling with elementary. We're really struggling to get at elementary. So we can run a program campaign where we are really focusing on keywords related to that specific program. For example, Montessori Elementary School or daycare or maybe after school program, so that it targets people that are using those specific target names, so that are searching for elementary schools in the area or elementary programs. Also just general Montessori. This is usually something that all schools will opt for because they want to come up when parents are searching for Montessori schools in their area. So this will group together keywords such as Montessori near me, Montessori schools in Dallas or in Houston, wherever your school is. This will target those people who will search on Google for Montessori schools, but don't specify a program. They're not making that clear for Google yet. And then branded. So this is a campaign that targets people who search for you by your school name. So that's another one that we can run. So yep, those are the different types of campaigns that you can run for your school again. And I always recommend just a general Montessori one. And then if you're really looking to target a program, I would recommend the program one as well. Because if you have to fill spots in elementary, you have to fill spots in elementary. Ad group, this is a term for further subdivisions of your campaign. So for example, if your program campaign could be further divided into 3 groups, one for each program. So daycare, elementary, middle school, each would have a different ad group so that you can monitor the results of each of those ads. So you don't want to monitor everything at once necessarily. You might want to say, how is this specific campaign doing? How is this ad group doing? Because we're still down on our numbers for our elementary program. So it allows you to really measure those results more specifically. And then again, with ad spend, the amount of money that is budgeted to be paid towards your Google. When it comes to ad spend, you are basically telling Google, I am willing to spend $500 this month. That is my ad spend for the month. So what Google will do is it will use up, it will run the campaigns until you've maxed out on that budget. So for some schools, they might max that budget halfway through the month because there's a lot of interest in people searching and people have clicked enough times for it to be $500. Other times, it might be a little bit of a slower month and you've set it to be $500, but it might not use all of that because, again, you're paying per click. So that's just something to keep in mind. So basically, when you determine your Google Ads budget, it's what is the max I can spend this month? What is I cannot go over this number. And again, it will all depend on location, school size, programs, all of those factors. All right, how we maintain your ads to get the maximum results. So I think when it comes to Google Ads, it is kind of one of those things you have to check regularly if you're running. So for us, we usually check all of our campaigns on a daily basis. Behind the scenes, our team gauges the impact of your ads and your business as a whole. Again, as I mentioned, this is looked into by measuring total numbers of inquiries in your CRM. This is why I always recommend if you're running Google Ads, sure, you will be able to look at your Google Ads account and see the numbers in there, but it will give you a much clearer understanding of whether they're effective or not if you have a CRM and you can actually measure and see how many people you're intaking, how many people are filling out forms. Hopefully, you will see an increase in those numbers. We also look at monthly trends, yearly trends to see what are the good times to run ads, what certain changes can be made. So the benefit of working with an agency when running Google Ads is that they're not only looking at data from your school, they're looking at data from all of the schools that they work with. And that really allows them to gauge the overall Montessori space. So they know when is the best time to run campaigns? When is the best time to maybe you can increase your budget a little bit or you can decrease your budget a little bit. And they assess that information. So it's a very data-driven process where they're really looking, observing, and seeing how everything is performing across the board. Also, they've already compared what keywords are working because they've been running ads for several years for several other schools. So that's always makes it a little bit easier. But if you're doing it on your own, it is something that it just is going to take that checking. So check once a day, see how many inquiries you're getting, and really invest in some type of client relationship manager so that you can see how many tours are being booked. You can see how many actual conversions are being made. Comparison is another thing. We try to maintain your key ad metrics in a healthy shape by comparing them to the averages we see across other Montessori school ad accounts. This is something that you usually would get when working with an agency, but it really helps. And then frequent review and communication. I think this is probably the most important thing based on metrics. Based on which metrics are underperforming, we either make changes to your keywords. So we might tweak around on what keywords we're bidding on, or usually we ask you to make a change on your website. We give you a recommendation. Our suggestions, you don't have to take on board. You don't have to make those changes. But if you don't make those changes and improvements aren't being made, we will again tell you, please make these changes on your website because they play a huge role in how your ads perform. So your website is really, really important. So again, you don't have to have a website through us, but if we tell you, put a CTA that's very clear, automate your tour scheduling, that will help how your Google Ads perform. Our Google Ads team is not only looking at the metrics, the numbers, they're looking at your website because that ties in very, very closely with how your ads are going to be performing. So it doesn't really matter if you're spending, let's say you're spending $2,000 a month on Google Ads, but your website is not optimized, you are missing out on a lot of potential return on your investment. So we want schools to be successful when they run Google Ads. So website first. And I will always say that to school, invest in your website. Make a couple of improvements. They can be very simple ones like the one I showed on the Nido site. You can always check that out if you need a reference. And then once those changes are made, then you might want to start running Google Ads at that point. Another warning. Don't listen to Google and their phone calls or emails. So keep in mind that Google is a business. They need to make money and they're trying to make money. So oftentimes when you start running Google Ads, you're going to get a bunch of emails or phone calls of people saying, "Oh, we can make some suggestions or improvements," or, "Oh, would you want to make this change to your campaign?" Please do not accept that. Please do not look into that because their job is to make more money. Their jobs are to increase stock value for their shareholders. That's the point of Google. So if you're doing it yourself, I would just say do a lot of research. If you're working with an ads agency, don't worry about these calls. Actually, if you accept these changes or if you pick up one of these calls and take on the advice, it can actually harm the campaigns that we're running. And then you're kind of back to square one. So we recommend don't listen to Google and their phone calls or their emails. Remember that they are a business, um, and they don't always have your best interest at heart. So I recommend, don't freak out if you start getting this. It's a very normal thing that happens when you start running Google Ads because what people do, they can see that you have a sponsored post. So they can go into the internet and they can put Montessori schools in Los Angeles and they can see all the sponsored schools and they're going to call you. They're going to give you a call because they're going to be like, "Oh, I can improve your rankings. I can improve your performance." Just ignore. I also wanted to briefly talk about social ads. And I would recommend checking out our YouTube channel because we had a whole town hall where we talked about the difference between Google Ads and social ads and when to use which one. But I'll briefly kind of go over it here, but I go much more in depth in that hour-long um, town hall. But when to use Facebook ads or meta ads, usually the main thing you need to keep in mind when it comes to should I run Google ads or should I run meta ads is how desperate are you to increase enrollment? Because if you really want to increase enrollment, the answer is Google ads. Reserve your budget for Google ads because that's what's going to be better. Because when parents are on Google, it means that they are high intent searchers. That means the parent is already ready to make a decision. It's like Elizabeth mentioned earlier, they're kind of in the buying phase. They're looking around, they're shopping around. Someone's typing into a search engine Montessori schools in my area, it's because they're interested in Montessori schools in their area. Whereas on social media, a parent might be interested in Montessori at home, or they might have a couple of friends that are in Montessori, or they might have a child that's Montessori aged, but they're not necessarily at the point where they are intently searching online. They're just scrolling on their phone. So it's not going to give you as high as a return on your investment, but it's great for building awareness. It's great for promoting shorter term events like open houses. And it's also great to try to redirect people to your website. Again, the main goal of all paid advertising is to get people to your website and for them to make a conversion on your website that you can track, that you can measure, and that you have a contact that is new that came in through that ad so that you can reach out to that parent. So it has helped you target and locate the right families for your school. So think about it in those perspectives. All right, any questions about running Google Ads, website questions, anything like that? Let's discuss if you have anything in the chat. Something I also want to mention, and this is something we really should have been a little bit more specific about, because what we noticed this enrollment season is a lot of schools were like, "Hey, we really, really need to increase enrollment," but they reached out to us in January and to run Google Ads, and usually January is, that's starting to be the peak time. Usually February, early March. Once you reach spring break, you should have the majority of your enrollments in. So if you want to run Google Ads to really kind of cash in on that enrollment period, I recommend starting them in the fall, whether that's October or November. So you have that 2-month grace period and you start honing in on those results come January, February, those busier months. See here, Mary. Ads are not my area of expertise. Where can I get some help? I mean, the Google ads, and technical information. Well, my recommendation is always if it's not something that you have an experience with, I would definitely work with an agency. Of course, I'll recommend Nido Marketing because we only work with Montessori schools and we offer Google Ad Management. So that is something that I would recommend to just use that expertise of somebody. You can hire other people to do your Google Ads for you as well, but I would really recommend because it is kind of one of those things that you have to check on a daily basis. Um, I come from the Montessori space. I've worked closely with an administrator. They wore many hats. They had many things to do. Oh, I have a Nido account. Are they available to help me with these? Yes. So, um, are you currently, Marianne, is your school currently a Google Ads client? Do you have that as a service?
I can look it up. Camilla, give me just 1 second.
Your website was designed by Nido. Okay. Um, Depending on your plan, because it's a separate service. So, if you go on our Nido Marketing website, you can click on our Google Ad Management, and you can always set up a consultation with myself. And then it's a $3.99 a month fee to add on to the service. Elizabeth will tell you now if I don't know.
No.
So it would have to be an add-on to your web service. But the good news is if you have a website through us, most likely it's already optimized. So you can start running Google Ads. Um, Okay. Okay, I see. Yeah, so it's something that you could always add on if you're interested in, and you can always access it here, and it works the same way as all of our other services. You can start at any time. The way that it works as well is, and it says here kind of step by step. Usually when we work with schools for Google Ads, we will have you fill out a form where we ask a lot of questions to give us an idea of what kind of campaigns you're wanting to run. So what programs you have, if you want to run any specific campaigns, your general location, we review your campaign and we create custom campaigns for your school. We'll allow you to review them and then we'll launch them and we'll track and optimize these campaigns, and we provide monthly Google Ad reports um, for all of the schools that we work with so that they can assess that information. Um, Thank you, Jill. How should one go about tweaking keywords on a regular basis? Um, Again, it just depends on with keywords. If you're not seeing the results that you want when it comes to Google Ads, that's when it's kind of a red flag and you're like, maybe I should assess the keywords. Again, you can use Keyword Finder to kind of come up with some alternatives and kind of test them. But with Google Ads, unfortunately, it is kind of like a testing process. We never know how things are going to perform until we launch the campaigns. That's why it always pays to work with an agency because they've done all of the testing already and seen what has worked across the board. So when you do it yourself, you're kind of having to guess, and then you're paying, you're investing, and then you have to see if it will work for you or not. So it's kind of a trial and error process with Google Ads. Um, well, I get a monthly report from Nido. If you run your Google Ads through Nido, our team is doing the keyword analysis for you. They are certainly doing this, and they would offer suggestions if they felt that it was necessary. Again, with Google Ads, also I should mention that just because you're running Google Ads throughout the year doesn't mean that you're always consistently going to be seeing more every month, every month, every month. There are just naturally slower periods when it comes to enrollment. So, and inquiries. So it will really depend, month by month. You might see a slight decrease on some months. You might see a slight increase on others. That doesn't always mean that your keywords are not performing well. It might just mean this is just a slow period for enrollment, but you still had a couple of conversions and inquiries come through. So it's not something that just because you run it every month upon month is going to increase month upon month, if that makes sense.
Hey Wally, in the chat, that is our ad campaign check-in form. You can always fill that out and then our ads team will take a look at it. And then we can always schedule a meeting or you can schedule a meeting with Maisel and we can invite the ad specialist there for you as well if you want to look into those keywords and just kind of get a check on how things are going.
Yeah, Elizabeth, I've done that with myself a few times. And I think there is a way for us to basically say, I don't like this keyword, I don't like that keyword, and provide that input. But I have to
Yes.
go back and review to see how to go about doing that. But I have done that not consistently, but on occasions.
Yeah, and with that monthly report, you should get a search term report, and that will give you a way that you can edit too, and just let Maisel know that you changed a couple things on there too.
And it's also always great to, if you are a Google Ads client, I recommend setting up those meetings every now and then if you notice that the types of leads that you're getting on tours might not be quite what you're targeting. Maybe we do shift the strategy from using keywords like daycare. Maybe that's not the right lead in the end. It didn't bring you a parent that would make the proper conversion. So it's good to check in with schools to see what they're actually experiencing, because again, you are the one giving the tours, you are the one actually meeting these conversions in real time. So it always is helpful to meet with us. See if there's any other questions. What I will note is please let us know if there's any town hall topics you want to talk about in the future. You can always email me. That's my email address. We're always looking for ways to meet your needs, to talk about different topics that might be helpful to you. So feel free to reach out to me at any time if there's ever a topic that you want to share. You can also join us as a speaker. Another thing to note, we are now offering free website audits. So this is something that you can access on our website. So if you ever want us to take a look at your website, if you go on this is our homepage. If you go under services, under websites, you can get a free website audit. You just fill out this form and include your website URL, and we'll take a look at it. I will record a screen recording. I'll give you some notes on what I think you can do to improve your website, and I'll email you that so you can kind of review it. You can either take my advice or not, but you'll receive that via your email inbox. So if you want us to do a website audit at any time, you can request one on our website, and I will do that. So just let us know. All right. Thing in the chat here. Like, does Nido occasionally audit the website they create, or should we be requesting one? Oh no, we do take a look at your websites. But if you would like to, you're more than welcome to request one. If you ever want us to take another look, if you're a current client, you are welcome to request an audit. I also recommend that every school just always maybe does a couple of checks throughout the year to make sure everything is up to date on their website. It's always good to make sure that information is updated, everything is looking good. But we're happy to give anyone an audit for Montessori marketing. All right, I'll stop sharing now. I'll be posting this video on our YouTube channel later, so if you want to check it out or anything that we discussed, you can check it out there, and you can also ask questions in the comment section there. I'll make sure to answer them. I keep an eye on our YouTube channel, so if you have any questions and you're watching the recording, happy to answer those questions as well. All right. Thank you so much for joining. I hope everyone, I believe it's a long weekend this weekend, so if you're having a long weekend, enjoy. If you're on spring break, enjoy. All right. Everyone have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next week. Take care, everyone.